Now today we have a dedicated, I don't know if it's dedicated, it's a rainy day. It looks like it's going to rain any day. I have a project I'm going to try to share with the friends that are interested in this kind of stuff. What happened the other day, we were out on the R1 and the starter became inoperable. Now, the way I know that is Luciano gave me a good heads up diagnose in it. When I was stuck on the road, we tried to jump start it. It was not a dead battery. The jumper didn't work at all. So what we did, we tested with a meter across the relay, the starter relay, and I'm getting 13 volts out the other side of the relay. When I get, and actually push the button, and this is what this would sound like when it's bad. When you hit the starter button, so I know the relay is operating, and I know that out this terminal, the terminal that goes to the starter, the hot terminal, I have the correct voltage, so I know something within the starter is bad. Now, what makes this, and I always say what's wrong, there's a thing that's wrong with, I guess, all of us, especially me. When something goes wrong, I look around for somebody else to blame. I'm not prone to say, well, Wendy, you screwed up. Well, when I bought this bike and it was about, I don't know, a year or two old, the starter from time to time would be funky. I'd go out on a ride and maybe in the course of starting 8, 10, 15 times in the course of a day, one of the times it would just, like it had a bad segment in the starter. Well, now it's bad that the starter doesn't even move, so it's going to make this an easy choice. So what I'm getting at is, if you know from this point on that I've got to pull the bike apart, and it's quite a big job to get the bike apart. I have the factory manual, I have all my electrical stuff, I have 2 spare batteries, and the usual suspects of tools that we use to test things. So what I'm going to do is pretty much spend a rainy day and try to share anything I learn along the way, which is the purpose of all our little fun videos. But taking this apart, now the step one is I want to make a spot up further in the garage where I can put the bike while I'm working on it. So just in case this doesn't go in the next day or two, or I need to wait to get a starter by mail or email, I'll have these other bikes to ride. This will not be sitting here in the way. So the first thing is, on any of these jobs, get out the factory manual and get the bike in a nice, stable, comfortable position. And keep in mind, this is an 8 going on 9-year-old bike. So what it means is, for 7 years I've put off the dental surgery. Now I got to go get the tooth taken out. So the first thing I thought is worth sharing, and anybody who tests a battery knows what this is. Luciano actually gave me that. You hook the negative side to the negative side, and this is a used battery that I'm not sure how, it's 2 years old, but it's my spare battery, and you can see it needs to be charged. Probably if I charged it, it would be better, but it doesn't really hold a good voltage, and that's a ballistic. Now this is the battery that came with the bike, which I've never thrown away. I put the lithium battery in it about 2 years into it, but I've always kept this for diagnosing things. But let me just show this battery as I hook this terminal up. This one, we're good with almost the 4th light. So this one's got a little more guts to it. But the one that's in the bike, what I've established is the one that's in the bike, it's not a battery issue, and we know it's not the relay issue. So the only thing left, I'll get out the factory manual. It's the starter, and by the way, this is only about a $10 tool. And when the bike is running, you can tell if your charging system is charging. And it's all self-explanatory on here. So that's a real handy thing to have if you're going to work on your own motorcycle. And what I'm saying about this is stuff that over the years Luciano has given me basic information. I'm only trying to pass on the little bit that I know. I am not, Vince is an electrical expert. Maybe other people, I'm sure, know a lot more than I do, but this is basic stuff, just to get an idea of if your battery's even usable or if it's time to just get a new one. Now, of course, the biggest help of working on any motorcycle, any time for any project, is having a factory manual. A genuine factory manual, not the alternate ones. And if you've ever had a factory manual, the nice thing is, no matter what, because I've done a lot of work on this bike, and totally invaluable in every way. And I would say if you have any kind of a complex modern motorcycle, this is what you want to have before you start any job. Because if you think about this, when you have to bring a bike to a dealer and pay $100, $125 an hour for somebody to work on your bike, this manual, and I got it for free when I bought. Here's what I did. It was actually pretty cute. When I bought the bike and made the deal, it was the middle of the winter, and I said, throw in a factory manual for free, and we got a deal. And that was like I was Donald Trump for a day or something there. So anyway, I did get the factory manual, and it has proved invaluable. And today we're going to use it. We're just going to go up to the part where it shows you how to replace the starter and go step by step. So if you look real quick, the factory manual, it would go to electrical starting system, and it gives you a list of the things. And obviously what's nice about this, if you do it the way I do it, I just do it step by step and check, diagnose each thing, which Luciano and I have already done, and because he does this all the time. And then you just go down the chart, which we're going to do, and in my case you come to the end of it and it's replace the starter. I just want to show how good this is. And if you were doing this from scratch, and I'm sure the Honda manual and all the Ducati manual, everything exactly the same. Troubleshooting, the starter motor fails to turn, which is the case with us. Before you're doing it, remove the rider seat, remove the passenger. I don't have a passenger seat. The heat protector, which we don't have the heat protectors, and remove the side cowls. So if you just go through this, what I'm saying is, this is really worth its weight. The first time you use this, it pays for itself, because you really can't bring a bike to a dealer and expect them to do this and not charge you a lot of money. And it's really not that difficult to do. No, I just thought I'd show this. This is some people find this entertaining. The reason I don't have a back seat is because I made this. I made two of them actually. This is made out of wood. I know that most people that look at it think it's a Yamaha part. It's really a piece of wood. And it's the wood, it's laminated end-grain balsa. It's the wood they make ocean racers out of, that I just happen to have a piece when I made that and then painted it to match the bike. Just a little side note to our job. Now another thing I always think is worth doing, while you have anything apart, clean it all up, and I will clean this up with a clean microfiber. But on an R1, it's real convenient where the fuses are, and the spares are all right in that little box right there. So that makes checking that as simple as pie while we have the bike apart. And boy, look at it raining out there. Wow. Really getting it started out to be a day. Luciano actually went for a ride today. Hope he didn't get wet. Now on this bike, both sides of the starter solenoid are protected by a 15 amp fuse, and what I've done, taken the cover off just before I do anything major. I'm verifying that all of the fuses are all good. Always the cheapest. I always start with the cheapest, easiest part to diagnose. And sometimes, if it's your lucky day, it is the cheapest, easiest part to diagnose, but in our case it isn't. It is not any of the fuses. So we've eliminated the fuses. We've eliminated the battery as a possibility. The starter relay, and so it's time to start pulling the bike apart as per the manual. Now as I'm pulling this apart, I notice one of the tabs on one of the pieces was, as can happen after 8-9 years in MotoGP service here, that the nice thing, I made a little patch, I've done that on video a million times already with fiberglass, but as you pull a bike apart, it'll look around, clean things, and look for things that are loose or rusted or broken. And then what I do as a final thing, I lay out the parts in the sequence I've taken them off the bike. And it just makes putting it back together, just especially for somebody as simple as me, just put them back together in the reverse order. Now in the interest of fairness and having a factory manual and everything sitting here, I have to tell you, one of the things I learned, and I learned it from the FZR when we were doing a lot of track days, is whenever you have to take the gas tank off one of these bikes, do it when the gas tank is almost empty. Well, you know what? When this happened, I had just filled up the gas tank. So I know this is going to be relatively heavy and cumbersome to get off. And that's always something you should try to plan. If you're going to do a job, clean the air filter, change plugs, and you're going to have to pull a tank off, If it's empty, just makes it a lot easier. And this work is hard enough, you don't have to find ways to make it harder. Now a little tip I find handy when I'm pulling a bunch of the battery, all the wires that go to the charging system, and as I take one out, I just put a zip tie on the ones that have to go back together and the zip ties that have to go back together, and I don't have them snaking around it, because in this case all this has to come out to get that last bolt out. There's always one bolt you can't get to without a lot of work, and the R1 is no different. Now here's a little tip worth its weight in gold. There's a little rubber plug right in the frame that comes out. When you take that rubber plug out, it allows you to get an Allen wrench in there, and without that you've got a world of things you'd be in the way. But if you don't know about this, and conveniently enough they don't really mention this, it's mentioned but it's in the bodywork section, not in the part of when you want to get the fuel tank out. So this has to come off, and I'm sure this is an 09. I'm sure some of the other ones, always look for these little rubber plugs. They're doing stuff that maybe there's some reason, I don't know, but if you don't know about that, just makes it more difficult. Another little small tip, as I start taking a bike apart, this is the first screw, second screw, screws that are in groups, the plug, and the tools I use to do this. So everything I need to put the bike back together, hopefully, will be nice and clean and on that rag. And as I put it back, I'll just run all the bolts on a polishing wheel, get any corrosion or anything off of them, clean them all up. Okay, there's always little tricks and tips, and obviously that's the point of making a video. Now on an R1, and I'm not sure, on an R6 it's probably no different. One of the things, and every time you take it apart you learn something different, there are two screws up under the bottom. See, this front cowl comes off, and it comes off easy once you take the two screws, but your screws are in the bottom. So what you have to do, and I personally like to use a rubber hammer when I pull a tank up. And what's nice about this, now I can just get in there with a short screwdriver. This front cowl piece will come right off, but that cowl piece, if you don't know those two screws are in there and you start pulling on it and hammering on it, it's not coming off. See, a lot of the little things, and this is the things that hold the side covers on, there's only one way these side covers go on. They use one bolt, you slide them back, that catches on that little tang, and then you put the bolt in. So the beautiful part of this is every time you take it apart. Now when I put a K&N air filter in previously. This will give me a chance to clean the air filter, and I'll do other maintenance while I have this whole thing apart. But that is a good trick, and a rubber hammer, as you can see, holds the tank up real nice while you get those two screws out. It's all about these little tips. And by the way, that tip, if you go to the manual, shame on them. They tell you, here's the steps. Remove the rider seat, the fuel tank cover, the upper cover. How do you get the upper cover off? You can't do it until you take the tank off. You know what? So shame on them. And that's why they didn't win the war. You know, we won. Anyway. Now, a rubber hammer is exactly the right size to hold that up. While you get in there and get the wires and the overflow and the fuel line and the wires to the fuel pump off. But again, I'm putting everything down here in order, and you would think, hopefully, that assembling it would just be the reverse of this at some point in time once we get a starter motor. Now, some of the jobs, like getting the quick disconnect off the fuel line, it's not as easy as you think it is. And a lot of the jobs are easier to do. Actually, getting that front cover off is easier to do this way too. I put some rags around the frame just so I wouldn't scratch, even though you don't see that part of the gas tank, just to protect it. But this disconnect, you better have some strong fingernails. And when we put these disconnects on our track bikes, like on that FZR, and actually the Yamaha has one of them too, these quick disconnects, you can break your fingertips. They're so hard to get on. It's unbelievable. Or maybe it is. Maybe I'm just a weakling. Probably that's the truth. But that's one of the tricks. Now we got to get the wires off, and then obviously pull the fuel tank. But boy, would this job have been a lot easier if that tank wasn't full of gas. Now, all the wiring parts that come apart relatively easily. The quick disconnect, a bare. Now there's two. And both of these hoses serve different functions. So when I take them off, I put a zip tie on the yellow one. That goes through the quick disconnect here. So I want to make sure, and this is only so you can take the tank off easily. That easily is not the right word here. Very labor intensive to do this, but of course this is a very high performance bike, and that's the price you pay for high performance. So this hose, I don't want to crisscross these. By putting a zip tie on the one side, I'll know that the yellow one goes to the yellow one. And believe me, it's not a minor thing. I can't even imagine what a dealer would charge to do this work. And then that all has to be done, actually not all of it, but that has to be done even just to service the air filter. Now the factory is very clever. What they do on these lines, they have one marked with a yellow dot and a white dot, a yellow dot and a white dot. Of course, the problem with all of this is you get gas on that or you rub it with your finger, the little dots come off. And I'm not sure what the downside would be if you reverse them, but you know, I don't want to try, that's for sure. The zip ties don't go away when you get a little gas on them. Little critical thing, these little covers have to come off the quick disconnects for the fuel line. If you don't take them off, I guess it's impossible to get it off. But the hardest thing with me is I don't have any, my fingertips were numb from squeezing that quick disconnect. That has really got a strong spring in it. And I try to keep everything in order, of course. So with all of that removed and laying over there in reverse sequence, the next thing that has to come off is the full air filter and then the throttle bodies, and then we should be able to get to the starter. Not going exactly by how they say to do this. The crankcase breather hose is the first part, and I'll just keep these parts in sequence. Next step is this connector, which has a very funny little tang. Every one of these connectors, of course, is different, and that's good that they are, because if they were ever two the same, I'd have to mark them. But these only go back one way, and so it simplifies a little bit, something that really is not that simple. Now, one of the things with this that I wanted to do really carefully is, because this is a serviceable air filter, and I have the cleaner to use on this. So the trick was, that I've done in the past anyway, you let that sit a few minutes. Boy, it stinks too. And I'll take some compressed air, blow that out, and then use, this is the label came off the can, but I know what it is. Oh, there it is. The oil that you oil the K&N filters with. And this just lets the motor breathe just a little bit better. I got rid of it the first time I had to take the bike apart. I got rid of this right away. And it's about 10,000 miles since I serviced it, so maybe I should be servicing this even more. I don't know, but I know it was relatively clean anyway. Well, the next step on this is going to be to pull the fuel injection wires off and all the hoses and everything. Again, it's another labor-intensive job, and all of that has to come off. And hopefully then we'll be able to get to the starter. But since I haven't replaced the starter on this yet, I don't know. I don't know where that's going to ultimately wind up. Anyway, that's all we're going to get done today. We do have the parts all laying out on the floor. And for day one, to get this much done, I guess it doesn't look like much, but we do have all the bolts out. And it's a babysitting day. It's the best part of our day. And we hope you've enjoyed this little video, picked up some tips, share it with your friends, and thanks for watching. What are you making here, Miles? You gluing? All right. Look at that. He's got his glue. He's got his word puzzle going. You got the crayons going.
I think we don't have one.
Now, the only thing left, if he would come and help me work on getting that starter out of the R1, we'd be so happy. Not going to happen.